ceasefire agreement in Israel's north has everyone wondering if this war is coming to an end. And although the deal is not without controversy, Israel is closing it on its own terms, and there are some significant advantages. In announcing a ceasefire, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made it clear that if Hezbollah launches a single rocket or is detected digging a single tunnel, Israel will attack. He added that the ceasefire allows us to focus on the Iranian threat, and he didn't elaborate on that note. Also, IDF soldiers provided a convincing victory image even before the ceasefire was announced by reaching the Litani River, and will tell you what they found there. Later in the report, TBN senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will give us a closer look at the developments with Iran, including a statement by Iran's chief of staff where he commits to attacking Israel at the appropriate time. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, the IDF is executing final moves to dismantle Hamas, while what's left of the Hamas terrorist organization's senior leadership is trying to gain some last-minute advantage by playing the hostage as a last card. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what's happening in Israel on the 418th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, or the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. All of them are under the directives of Iran, the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. Just before we start, we really need you to click on the subscribe button so that you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Today's video is sponsored by Artza Box. If you don't know Artza yet, please stay tuned. Those of you who ordered and got it are already sending us photos and comments, and we see how much joy it brings. So later in the report, I'll explain to you how you too can enjoy that experience. But first, as always, the news. The late Hezbollah leader, Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, is probably spinning in his grave to see how Israel is achieving most of the goals that for 2 decades and a year of war he was not willing to compromise on. An analysis of the emerging agreement with Lebanon on the strategic level shows that it is an agreement with important advantages for Israel, allowing it to translate the crushing blow it has delivered to Hezbollah into an improved reality on the northern border and at a regional level of the Middle East. As we delve into the recent ceasefire agreement with Lebanon, it's important to understand how this development aligns with Israel's strategic interests and advances our overreaching goals in the region. The ceasefire, coupled with understanding with the United States, grants Israel the legitimacy to act decisively if Hezbollah attempts to rebuild its military infrastructure south of the Litani River. Should the Lebanese army and UNIFIL fail to prevent Hezbollah's rearmament, Israel now has the backing to enforce the agreement militarily if necessary. Additionally, this development effectively disrupts Iran's strategy of creating a unified front against Israel. With the operational link between Lebanon and the Gaza Strip severed, Hamas finds itself isolated. This isolation may improve conditions for negotiating the release of the Israeli hostages in Gaza, as Hamas can no longer rely on support from Hezbollah. The ceasefire also paves the way for rebuilding the northern region and ensuring the security of its residents. The threat of Hezbollah's elite Radwan force invading Israeli territory has been neutralized. Israel has destroyed significant military infrastructure near our borders, allowing displaced residents to return home with an enhanced sense of security. Avoiding a prolonged war of attrition is another crucial benefit. Insisting on unrealistic war aims such as the complete disarmament of Hezbollah could drag Israel into a costly and extended conflict. The ceasefire savors us from being dragged down in the complex physical, culture, and political terrain of southern Lebanon, especially with the challenges of approaching winter. Speaking of internal Lebanese politics, Hezbollah faces a weakened position within Lebanon, and its enemies have been more willing in recent months to stand up against them. The Lebanese public now has an opportunity to hold the organization accountable for the devastation inflicted on the country's fragile economy and the displacement of its people. This internal criticism further diminishes Hezbollah's standing and complicates its efforts to rearm, reorganize, and continue presenting a threatening face to Israel. Ending the war in Lebanon also allows Israel to refocus on the critical threat posed by Iran's nuclear ambitions. With the conflict in the north de-escalated, we can engage more effectively with the incoming United States administration to address this existential concern. It is an opportune moment to strengthen our dialogue with international partners on this issue. The ceasefire also creates a favorable environment for renewing normalization efforts with Arab and Muslim countries, particularly Saudi Arabia. By reducing tensions on the northern border and increasing pressure on Iran, we bolster the United States' position in this region, which can facilitate broader peace initiatives. On the home front, the agreement alleviates the heavy burden on our reserve forces and provides the opportunity for a much-needed boost to the economy, which has been strained by the prolonged conflict. Additionally, halting the war allows Israel to replenish the IDF's supplies of ammunition, equipment, and weaponry. It facilitates the release of delayed arms shipments from the United States, enhancing our preparedness for future challenges and ensuring that our forces are well-trained and equipped. Finally, the agreement enables Israel to initiate regional and international efforts to curb weapon smugglings through Syria to Hezbollah. Diplomatic and military pressure on the Assad regime can help prevent the flow of arms, further isolating Hezbollah and dismantling its capabilities. In summary, the ceasefire with Lebanon offers Israel a strategic opportunity to translate our military successes into a more secure and stable reality on the ground. It's a prudent move that allows us to focus on pressing threats and strengthens our position both regionally and internationally. Here at TBN Israel, we'll continue to monitor these developments closely and keep you informed on their implications for Israel and the region. The continuing rocket and drone attacks on Israel are not aimed at the IDF soldiers, but rather at civilians all over the land. This includes families and communities that have been torn apart by the need to evacuate and the need for many of the men to serve in the IDF reserves. In many cases, there is only one parent left to take care of the entire family, and this is especially hard when the livelihood comes from a small business. For all of these reasons, the economy has suffered severe damage, especially near the Gaza Strip and the Lebanese border area. We hear from our viewers about how much you love and pray for Israel, and how much you miss being able to visit us here in the Holy Land. I know you want to be a blessing for Israel's peace and prosperity, and we all hope to see you here again soon as possible. But until then, you can help Israel by bringing a piece of it to you. I'm talking about Arza boxes, which are filled with locally produced, handmade products that bring the flavors, scents, and craftsmanship of the Holy Land, produced by local Israeli artisans, right to your doorstep. So ordering Arza boxes is not only a great gift to yourself or to your loved ones, it's honestly sending hope and comfort to our brave people, to the people of Israel. Arza means in Hebrew, towards the land, and that's exactly what it's all about. Please go to www.arzabox.com to order yours today. And don't forget to use our exclusive 10% discount by entering the code TBNIL. And together, we will be a blessing to Israel and to the whole world. Thank you, and now let's get back to the news. Now, let's dive back into the situation unfolding in Lebanon. We've just heard how Iran's influence and the rebuilding of Hezbollah are central to the evolving dynamics in this region, the Middle East. To help us unpack this even further, we turn to TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst, Mati Shoshani, for a closer look at what these developments mean for Israel's security and the broader Middle East.
Thank you, Yair. As the situation in Lebanon continues to unfold, Iran's involvement is evident for all to see. While a ceasefire might seem like a temporary resolution, it could also be an opportunity for Hezbollah to rebuild with Iranian support. And now, let's take a closer look at the bigger picture and how Iran is planning to use this ceasefire to its advantage. First and foremost, Iran sees this ceasefire as a moment to regroup and rebuild Hezbollah's military capabilities in this region. Despite the temporary halt in hostilities, we know that Hezbollah's military infrastructure, including rocket launch sites, observation posts, and tunnels, is likely to be restored almost immediately after the ceasefire takes effect. Now, security experts believe that Iran has greenlit this process because it's essential for Tehran's long-term strategy and survival. For Iran, Hezbollah serves as a key military asset, acting as a frontline force, protecting Iran from potential Israeli attacks on its nuclear facilities. And while the ceasefire allows Hezbollah to regain its footing, Iran's role in this process is pivotal. We've seen that Iranian resources are already being funneled into the region, with an emphasis on rearming Hezbollah. The organization's infrastructure in southern Lebanon, particularly its military bases, were heavily targeted during this conflict. But we can expect Iranian funds to help Hezbollah rebuild and enhance its capacity to strike at Israel. Now, once the civilian reconstruction efforts are complete, Hezbollah is expected to return to its former positions, close to the border with Israel, this time more fortified than ever before. The objective for the Iranians is very clear: bolster Hezbollah's strength so it can again act as a deterrent against Israeli action in this region, and especially in the event of an Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. Israel is facing a critical challenge here. While the international community pushes us for peace and a ceasefire, the reality on the ground is that Hezbollah and Iran are preparing for the next phase of their operations. And Israel, both military and civilian, must remain vigilant, ready to counteract any potential threats that may arise from this rebuild effort. The Israeli Air Force has already prepared for this new wave of weapon shipments that will likely come through Syria and through Lebanon. These weapons will not only bolster Hezbollah's military capability, but may also be transferred to other Iranian-backed terrorist groups in this region. Israel will need to keep a close eye on these shipments and act quickly to prevent them from reaching their intended destination into the hands of terrorists. Iran's internal situation is another factor influencing its strategy. The Iranian regime is under significant pressure, both domestically and internationally. The anticipated return of a more aggressive U.S. policy under President-elect Donald Trump could lead to renewed economic sanctions, which would further strain the Iranian economy. In response, Iran is doubling down on its efforts to maintain its influence in this region, using proxies like Hezbollah to project their power over Israel. At the same time, Iran is dealing with mounting internal unrest. The Iranian people, weary of the government's policies, are increasingly vocal in their opposition to the regime. This adds another layer of complexity to Iran's actions in Lebanon and elsewhere. And as the government seeks to maintain its grip on power while facing external and internal challenges. Looking beyond Hezbollah, Iran's activities in the broader Middle East are part of a much larger strategy to solidify its control over key areas. From Syria to Iraq and Yemen to Lebanon, Iran is working to expand its influence and ensure that its proxies are in place to defend its interests. In Syria, Iran has already made significant investments in military infrastructure. These include missile storage sites and advanced weaponry systems, which it shares with Hezbollah and other regional terrorism groups. All these assets form part of Iran's deterrence strategy, allowing it to maintain a military presence that can threaten Israel at multiple points along its borders. This ongoing military buildup, combined with the geopolitical challenges Iran faces, creates a volatile situation for Israel. The Israeli government will need to carefully balance its military response with diplomatic efforts to contain the Iranian influence and prevent further destabilization in this already tight and pressured region. Israel's strategic defense posture will likely shift in the coming months as the situation in Lebanon and Syria continues to develop. Experts predict that Israel may need to take a more proactive approach in disrupting these Iranian-backed networks and preventing the buildup of further military infrastructure. This will all involve continued airstrikes against key Iranian targets in Syria and in Lebanon, but it will also require a robust intelligence operation to track the movement of weapons and fighters across this region. Israel's intelligence community has shown time and again that it can detect and disrupt these operations, but it will need to stay ahead of an increasingly sophisticated enemy. In conclusion, while the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah may offer a temporary respite, it by no means is a permanent solution. Iran's influence in the region remains a significant concern for Israel, and Hezbollah's rebuilding effort will only increase the threat posed by the Iranian proxy. For the people of Israel, the road ahead will require a combination of military readiness, intelligence operations, and diplomatic efforts to ensure that Hezbollah and Iran are not able to again rebuild their forces unchecked. The challenge is significant, but Israel's military and intelligence capabilities put it in a strong position to respond. Now back to you, Yair Pinto.
Thank you, Mati, for that insightful analysis. As we've seen, while the ceasefire offers a temporary break, it also presents new challenges for Israel. Iran's role in this process will undoubtedly shape the next phase of the conflict. As always, we must remain vigilant and proactive to ensure our security. Please continue to help us spread the truth by sharing our videos on YouTube and following us on social media. You can also directly support TBN Israel by making a donation on our website. Your continued support allows us to bring you these crucial updates. Stay tuned for more right here on Boots on the Ground. Against the backdrop of a ceasefire in the north with the Hezbollah terrorist organization, we must also look at the impact it will have on the fighting in the Gaza Strip against Hamas. A senior official in the Hamas terrorist organization has already declared openly that his organization will not stop the fire even when Hezbollah does so. At the same time, sources in the security establishment did not rule out the possibility that a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah could lead to a breakthrough in negotiations with Hamas for the release of the Israeli hostages. According to a report in the Israeli news portal Walla, such a deal may include maintaining Israeli control over the Philadelphia corridor. Additionally, a senior security official told Walla on Sunday that the military pressure exerted on Hamas and its allies has brought the possibility of reaching an agreement for the return of the hostages closer than ever. Furthermore, security officials believe that Hamas's ability to coordinate its activities with Hezbollah has been severed, placing the terrorist organization under enormous pressure. From Hamas's perspective, the main advantage they still have is the Israeli hostages they're holding, and the way this issue, amongst others, is dividing Israeli society from within. Hamas has played on these divisions, teasing Israelis by releasing videos and pictures of hostages to torment their families and stoke tensions. IDF troops have captured intelligence materials in Gaza that indicate strategic plans, and this was part of those strategic plans from the beginning. However, although this part of the Hamas strategy is going according to plan, almost everything else about it has completely fallen apart. Now, the IDF is close to destroying the last remaining fighting formations of Hamas in the northern Gaza Strip. The operation in the northern sector, focused on the city of Jabalia, has been ongoing for 50 days. The IDF estimates that of the 3,000 or so Hamas fighters who had concentrated in this city before the IDF moved in, around 1,300 have been eliminated and about the same number have surrendered or been captured. This leaves just around 400 hardcore fighters who refuse to surrender even though their position is hopeless. They appear to want to go down fighting and take as many Israelis with them as they can. The civilian population of the city has had enough, and most of them have already evacuated to designated safe zones further south, depriving Hamas of their human shields. The town of Bet Hanun near Jabalia has been completely emptied and has effectively become the first Gazan community to almost entirely turn into a ghost town. The rest of the northern Gaza Strip, Atatra, Bet Lahia, and the Jabalia refugee camp have almost entirely been evacuated, although there is still active fighting there and a few thousand civilians also remain. The main interest of Hamas's leadership now is not to lose its civilian grip on the northern Gaza Strip and Gaza City. The more Israel continues resolutely to evacuate civilians from the fighting areas in the northern Gaza Strip, and especially as the IDF plans to reinforce forces for additional pressure on Hamas in the other western and southern parts of Gaza City, the pressure on Hamas's leadership will increase, and the hope is that they will agree to return all of the Israeli hostages. I want to conclude by paying my last respects to a hero who died defending the state of Israel, Staff Sergeant Yona Betzalel Brief, 23 years of age from Modi'in Maccabim Reut, a combat medic in the Duvdevan unit, who was critically wounded in battles in Kfar Aza on October 7, passed away yesterday from his wounds at the Tel HaShomer Medical Center. Brief was severely wounded by terrorist gunfire on that terrible day, hitting several parts of his body. After intense treatment, he was able to regain consciousness and meet with his family and his friends. He seemed to be making progress on the road to recovery, but in recent days his condition deteriorated, and on Tuesday morning he passed away. We will continue to bring you the truth every day from Israel, so please help us share it with anyone who seeks to know what's happening in this region, in this war. The purpose of this is to pray for the situation. As believers of Yeshua, Jesus, we were called to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and to pray for Israel. So today, let's pray for the IDF soldiers that are defending this country in Lebanon, in the Gaza Strip, in Judea and Samaria. Let's unite in prayer for the release of the hostages from the Gaza Strip, that they will be reunited with their loved ones in Israel. Let's pray that God will give wisdom to the leaders of Israel and all the countries that are involved in this conflict. Let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and together we will win this war because God is on our side.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.